Based on our user workflow, we identify what are those content objects that we need to support all those sequence of actions or user system interaction. Now it's time to see what are these available UI elements that could represent our content objects. Let me show you here. Like these hierarchy kind of elements were the things that we extracted from our user workflow. We had pages, we had some content blocks, and we had components under each block. And you might have several levels and layers of components, like components inside components, content blocks inside content blocks, and so forth. But eventually everything would be organized based on the information architecture that we've done, based on the card sorting we've done, would be organized in a kind of form that's more or less similar to a sitemap, like pages and then the content on each page and component inside the blocks and so forth. Okay, so now it's the time to see what would represent each component, like how we want to create those things in our design. The best practice would be to go and check UI elements that we could use, and these are some standard UI elements that I found. Like one of them is this dialog box. Like dialog box, when we want to communicate with the user and ask for their reaction, like we want to give them some information and ask them to choose something. Okay, so dialog boxes are great for this thing, and we have different types of dialog boxes. This is from, for example, material design. Okay, so we could have dialog box with actions. Like usually there's a title, there's a text, sometimes icons there. Sometimes we have a list, like a kind of table or grid here, like this is 4-column grid, and then actions and so forth. Like basically we decide what should be on that dialog box, like what we want to communicate with our user and ask for their for their reaction, basically. Okay, the other thing is modal. Modal basically is a kind of pop-up that we see on screen, like this background screen, all content would be blurred, and the pop-up would be, or this modal pop-up would be on top of everything, and then it's kind of section of a page that has a close button, usually on top right. There would be some buttons on the bottom right side of the modal, and there are some content element, like there are something that the user could choose from, or it's like a dialog box but with more like sophisticated kind of content and options to choose from. Okay, like the two examples are basically here, but you can see the similarities. Close button on top right, and those like usually two buttons at least, like one for canceling or discarding. The other one is kind of primary button, as you can see, to proceed or save or submit, or like the main action. Okay, the next element is a calendar. Calendar is a useful thing when we have different options for a calendar, like month view, day view, weekly view, and like list of tasks, hourly view, and many more. So based on what we want to communicate with the user, we choose one of them. So this is another content object that we can use. A scheduler is pretty much similar to calendar, but it's more like a kind of tasks are there, and the duration of the task would be visible, and then would be some icons, some titles, start, end kind of things, and there usually would be something like shows the current time and current day or something like that, and then the user would be able to choose like these different types of view, like daily view, weekly view, monthly view, and so forth. I could choose a date, like date picker is another element there. Okay, so scheduler is another content object or UI element that could represent our content objects, basically. Cards are different, usually we have some titles, textual content, visual content, some avatars, icons, based on where and what we want to represent. Okay, so cards would be another types of UI elements that we can use for that purpose. Another one is a carousel. Carousel is when we need to show different images or kind of a set of cards or images, so we use something like a carousel. Tables are very important as well as another type of UI element that's been around. Like when you are designing kind of data intensive system or data intensive product, usually you need to present the information in a kind of grid format or table format, and you have usually a search button, you have kind of breadcrumb, you have columns, rows, and then you have some icons inside the grid. You have usually a pagination kind of thing, so tables would be another choice that you might use in your design. Sometimes you replace the table with some kind of cards. I believe I can show you an example somewhere, like for example, if it's loading. Like here, for example, I'm using some kind of card instead of table. You see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and many, more than 9 columns here inside a card. And if I want to show you the table view is like this. Okay, and in table view we could have nested tables as well. Like when you open one or click on one of these rows, you would be able to see like secondary level table inside, like this one. Okay, let's get back to our work. Then we have forms, and form design is another thing. I'm going to talk about form design in a different video, but it's very important because when you want to collect several pieces of information, many pieces of information from your user, you're going to use kind of form. And form design is a great challenge nowadays because if you just compare these two versions, like before after kind of thing, you see how organized is the second one. There are some principles, there are some best practices to create your form design. So that's a topic for another thing, but form is another thing. Like in all website we have, or all digital product, we have some sort of forms, like for example, payment method, shipping address, login, sign up, or many other things. Like there should be a kind of form in your design as well. So form is another challenge, another UI element or content object you need to consider as part of your design. So on blog would be like a combination of a couple of those things. So basically here I'm just introducing different types of content objects, UI elements that represent content objects. And the reason is that I believe the best practice would be to go through different UI kits, like Tailwind, like Ionic Design, like Material Design, Fluent Design, iOS Design, different UI elements, and collect those that are more appropriate to your work, and they would work the best in your cases. I would usually create an inspiration sheet inside a FigJam file by copying, pasting these screenshots of different things, and there I would make my decision that, okay, what type of calendar should I use here? What type of, for example, cards should I use here in this page, in this specific, for this specific content object? Okay, so then when I'm creating my my mid fidelity prototype, I would know which one to use, which one works the best, because I've seen some best practices, I've seen some standard UI elements for my content objects, so it would help me to make a bit better, make much more informed decision to choose my content objects or UI elements in my design.